Hello, I'm Miriam Graysco, the investigative editor of Rappler, and you are watching Newsbreak Chats. Newsbreak Chats is our monthly huddle with Rappler journalists and analysts to share insights about the issues we've tackled in our in-depth reports. In February, we remember the EDSA People Power Revolt that sent Marcos, the dictator, and his family fleeing the country. The commemoration is most significant this year, 2022, the 36th anniversary, because we are in an election cycle where today the frontrunner in the presidential race is the son and namesake of the dictator. Between getting rid of Marcos Sr. and the many evidence of what the Guinness call the greatest robbery of a nation, and what currently appears to be the formidable position of Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. in the race, what happened? Sharing their insights with me, joining me today on Newsbreak Chats, are sociologist Jail Cornelio, who is the director of Ateneo de Manila's Development Studies program. He's written for Rappler about the so-called youth vote, the division of the Christian community over the Marcoses, among others. Hello, Jail. Also with us is Joel Pablo Salud, who is a senior desk editor at Rappler, and he's the one on top of the team covering the EDSA anniversary this year. He also writes a column for Rappler. Hi, Joel.
Hello.
Okay. And we have our multimedia reporter, Ram Botalabo. He is the face of Rappler's TikTok series, debunking the lies and myths surrounding the Marcoses. Their series is called Marcos Invento Vistado. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. So yung ating unang tanong, what happened between 1986 and 2022 that we now find ourselves with the majority of voters preferring a Marcos for president? Speechless tayo.
Ang dami kasi nangyari. Ang dami nangyari, no? Madaming nangyari, pero in a way, walang kinalaman dun sa EDSA. So, every year, we end up just pushing it, the back of our memories, and eventually, this generation, no, and even us, no, kahit dun sa mga nandoon, parang ang layo, parang ang tagal, parang ano na lang siya, no? Parang it's just a memory na parang intangible na siya, hindi na siya nahawakan, you can't feel it, except for those na nandun like me na when you talk about it, it's still very real and a very important event in Philippine history. Yun. Kaya lang, dami nangyari.
Si Joel was outside Camp Crame, tama?
Yeah,
during the
I was
revolt.
outside Camp Crame. I was 23 years old back then, and wala nga ako naiintindihan tungkol doon eh. I almost failed to file a story pa nga. Kasi I was awed at what was happening. Until someone called me, sir, yung Joel, yung report mo pala. Sabi ko, ay, sorry, hindi ko pa nasusulat. Like, I was awed. Sa dami ng tao, it was the first time I saw something like that. And it amazed me, unbelievably amazed me.
A common analysis would be nagkulang daw tayo ng pagtuturo ng history, especially the martial law part, dun sa mga sumunod na generation after EDSA. Then, so nakalimutan ang nangyari noong martial law, and then mas madaling nakapag-seed ng disinformation or ng revisionist version ng history ang mga Marcoses. And then another analysis is that for several years now, the Marcos camp has been seeding social media with lies and disinformation. Kaya yung bagong generation ng botante, biglang nakikita siya in a light that's different from how we saw the family during martial law. May iba pa ba kayong nakikitang dahilan kung bakit parang biglang nag-full circle, nag-turn around yung Filipinos na ousted a Marcos 36 years ago and then voting for a Marcos now?
Ako, Gigi, if I may. Ang isang nag-emerge na konsepto sa amin sa mundo ng mga social scientists, yung konsepto ng authoritarian nostalgia. Maraming nagsasabi na actually maraming Filipinos ang disappointed, maraming nagsasabi na ang mga kabataan ay hindi edukado or hindi alam ang kasaysayan. Pero I really feel na napaka one-sided ng ganong klaseng analysis, always blaming young people for the return of the Marcoses. Sa totoo lang, Gigi, Rambo, Sir Joel, ang tingin ko ay itong nostalgia for the glorious past, the imagined glorious past ni Ferdinand Marcos. To be sure, it was already there. No? 1990s pa lang, alam natin na may mga glorious na. Pero tandaan natin na up until 2010, napakabango ng mga Aquino at nanalo si Noynoy, our president. It was only in 2016 and until now that we are really seeing the effects of, the fantasy and this excitement that many Filipinos have with a strongman leader. Sa tingin ko, bago yun eh. Although I know that there are academics and social scientists na nagsasabi na hindi, actually itong ating authoritarian preference ay andyan na for a long time. Pero ako, ang tingin ko, it's only now that it is reinforced. Number one, because of historical distortionism, denialism. Hina-hijack niya, hindi lang yung kawalan ng edukasyon ng mga kabataan, I think also yung disappointment ng maraming mga tao eh. Patingin naman natin yung preferences, yung voting preferences ng mga tao for Bongbong Marcos according to age. It cuts across all age brackets.
Exactly.
It does. So mahirap na ibigay natin yung blame sa kabataan lang na kayo ang dahilan kung bakit merong pagbalik ang mga Marcos sa kapangyarihan. When in fact, it really cuts across generations. That's my next Rappler piece actually. I'm hoping to write about that in March.
Rambo, kumusta yung response sa Marcos Mythbuster series mo? What have you learned from the comments?
Yung ating response, yung response na tatanggap natin sa Marcos Invento Bistado. I mean, let's put a background on this first. Kaya naman talaga natin to ginawa itong series na to. And you're in consultation with this, Ms. Gigi. Thank you for also being a good editor for this. Talagang ang social media babad na babad sa disinformation, sa kasinungalingan tungkol sa dito sa magical time of Marcos dictatorship eh. As in, para siyang panahon talaga na gustong balikan ng mga tao at kinikwento sa mga bata na ang ganda ng panahon ni na Marcos at napakagagaling, napakahuhusay ng mga Marcoses. At ito yung nire-reinforce across social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, even Twitter. Kaya naisip na natin na dapat siguro sabihin natin, ikwento natin sa TikTok din at sa short videos sa Facebook at sa TikTok, itong katotohanan, pumunta tayo sa mga dokumento, hindi lamang yung sabi-sabi lang sa tabi-tabi. At syempre, dahil nga itong ating nilalabas na mga video ay salungat sa kanilang pinaniniwalaan for the past few years already, babad na talaga sila na ito walang kasalanan ng mga Marcos, gawa-gawa lamang ang mga kasalanan nila. Ito ay lahat ng kagagawa ng mga Aquino. When you put something that contradicts that, syempre ang kanilang immediate reaction sa ating mga video ay hate. Ano bang alam mo? At syempre dahil ako rin mismo, wala naman ako sa panahon ng EDSA, pero nagkwento rin sa akin ng aking mga parents, lolo't lola, at saka nagbasa rin ako tungkol sa EDSA. Syempre may alam din ako dito at alam kong bumabalik tayo sa dokumento, may vine-verify tayo. Pero ang reaction talaga is completely toxic. Para siyang alam niyo yung Duterte vitriol din, Duterte social media vitriol, but it's more toxic there this time, especially since elections. I think napakaraming mga troll accounts din na ginawa para mag-amplify ng messaging about the Marcos dictatorship, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, lahat yan. As in, systematic attack. Kung sumasalungat tayo sa kasaysayan na kanilang binabanggit at inaalaala ngayon, syempre ang immediate reaction nila is rejection. Pero meron din naman mga tao, thankfully, na meron naglalabas din ng suporta sa atin na huwag tayong tumigil sa pagsasabi ng totoo kaya sila mismo ay nakita at naranasan ng karahasan at korupsyon ng martial law.
Si Jahil and Joel, you
Okay.
over the years, no? Joel, you want to say something?
No, I just want to pick up on what Rambo and Jail said. No, Jail using the word fantasy and Rambo attributing the contribution of social media to the whole problem. No, One thing I've always looked at, no, kasi yung um, Marcos did not only revise history. Ang sa akin ang tingin ko parang what he introduced was an alternative history, no? And so in a way alternative reality yan, ano? So panibago. It's not just binago tong part na to, binago to, kundi nag-introduce sila ng panibagong mundo, panibagong realidad na madaling mag-latch on yung tao. Why? Because yung pinanggagalingan ng alternative reality na yon is also alternative reality, which Rambo said, is social media. So it latches on easily eh. Kasi andali eh. Many of the trolls have no faces. They have no names. They're practically anonymous. Diba? And so these two converging help in spreading not just a lie, but a totally new universe where people can actually get lost in. And once you believe it, no, like the golden years of Marcos, the Camelot of Marcos, no, him being the poster boy King Arthur in a sense, and Imelda being Guinevere and Martial Law being Excalibur. So medyo malupit yung no, malupit yung kinreate nilang reality na yun. Ang hirap makalabas doon. It's like a maze. Once naniwala ka doon, andun ka. Ipit ka na doon. Ang hirap makaalis. That's why hindi mo ma-penetrate kasi yung venue or yung media na pinanggagalingan din ng alternative reality na yun is in itself an alternative reality.
Tapos, nasasabayan pa yan ng analysis ng mga taong totoo namang nag-aaral o nag-o-observe ng lipunan ng politika natin na sinasabi kasi ang daming failures ng EDSA kasi it failed to deliver on its promises of reform. Pero I've observed over the years, Jael and Joel, you've been writing about EDSA and there's somehow a refusal to see it as a failure, or at least there's a call to not look at it from just the reforms that it failed to deliver. Why so?
I don't know. Sa akin ganito eh. Ang explanation ko dyan was that, being there, no, at EDSA, there was no ideology behind it. I keep on explaining. It was, I'm not calling it the spur of the moment, pero there was no ideology. We were there because we wanted to just, get rid of a dictator. That was it. There was no ideology behind it. And, one of the things I've read also kay, tungkol dyan was that one author said na all these things that came after, no, yung all these things na pinaniniwalaan nila about reforms, changes, lasting changes, a complete overhaul of society as the purpose of EDSA came only really later, no? Yung mga spin masters na gumawa nun eh. They talked about that. But in reality, yung mga tao nandun sila because they wanted to protect the soldiers as the call of Jaime Cardinal Sin said. And later on, we just wanted to get rid of the dictator. It's a little over 20 years of his rule. And for crying out loud, we've had enough of that. Yun ang sentiment na bit ko when I was there 23 years old. And as a 23-year-old, what do I know about, whatever overhaul or changes na dapat gawin? There was no, sa akin and in the minds of other young people I was there with, wala yun eh. Wala yun. It was not a failure in that sense.
Jael.
Yeah. Oo. Naintindihan ko si Sir Joel and really much respect to your generation, Sir Joel, and those who really were there. At napansin ko yung ganyang klaseng passion and fervor about EDSA. Ramdam na ramdam ko whenever I have these conversations with my senior colleagues, no, sa university. At nararamdaman ko, sabi pa namin isa sa akin at the end of the day, Jael, it is our generation that will judge what really happened. And naiintindihan ko yun. And especially if I take a step back, titingnan ko yung objective indicators, poverty incidence, economic growth, self-rated poverty, lahat naman yan nag-improve over time. Yes. And so in that sense, parang unfair nga na sisihin ang post-1986 governance at lahat ng mga and of course, sinisisi dyan ang mga dilawan, quote-unquote, very alam niyo yan, Sir Joel. Pati ikaw, magiging dilawan ka na kasi nandun ka, di ba? Very problematic. Very
So kung
problematic.
nakadilaw ako, I didn't realize. Kasi,
Well, multicolor naman tayo ngayon. Eh. So, I guess
Oo, ikaw lang.
different ideologies.
Ako naka-adjust sa look ako ngayon.
pero gusto ko rin sabihin na I think ultimately, siguro, ito from a sociologist's point of view, whether or not may ideology yung 1986, mataas siguro yung expectations that things would really turn around, you know?
Yes.
So, di ba Sir Joel, hanggang ngayon, nagpapadala pa rin tayo ng mga Pilipino to work abroad. Hanggang ngayon,
Yes.
marami pa rin naghihirap. Hanggang ngayon, napakadami pa rin na nasa Class D at Class E. Hanggang ngayon, ang
Yes.
nararamdaman natin, yung mga mayayaman ng yumayaman. Hanggang ngayon, andun pa rin yung oligarchs. Yung mga crony, pinalitan ng mga oligarchs. So, parang, yung ganong sentimiento na parang, akala ko na ang lahat, bumalik na lang tayo sa dati. I think yung ganong sentiment, even hindi siya pwedeng tapatan ng fact-checking. Mahalaga ang fact-checking, pero hindi siya kayang tapatan ng fact-checking lang. Bakit? Kasi merong nabuong fantasy that life was much better than. And it's unfortunate na itong klaseng ganitong rhetoric at diskurso nanggagaling to sa mga lolo-lola natin na hindi naman talaga naapektuhan ng martial law, nanggagaling ito sa mga taong hindi napahirapan ng human rights violations, pero yung kwento ng mga tinamaan ng pananamantala sa human rights violations, sa press freedom and so forth, yung boses na yun, ang daling i-dismiss ngayon, all in the name of the good old days. I think yun yung challenge para sa atin na nandito sa media industry at saka at sa amin na nasa academe. How do we communicate kung merong alternative vision, merong alternative story na pinakita sila, sinikwento sila gaya na sabi ni Sir Joel, can we in the academe and the media industry present a more compelling story and a more compelling vision about the future? Unfortunately, nahuhumaling ang mga tao sa strongman leadership. That's the problem.
Na-reinforce
Actually,
pa kasi ni Duterte, di ba? Yung
Exactly.
sinasabi mo authoritarian nostalgia.
It changed the
Lumakas.
narrative. He changed the narrative for all of us. Forget the fact na he was not really an effective president, right?
Yes.
Okay? Pero people
Very-
feel safe. People feel safer. We cannot deny that.
Tsaka meron din other factors that sometimes people miss, you know. Like for example, nung time na yun, nakakalimutan natin na may lupus na si Marcos. Suddenly, there was a general sense that Marcos was indestructible, no? Yung strongman, talagang buo yung image na yun, na he was indestructible, you cannot overthrow him, he's going to be there forever, no? Parang ganun yung pinaka-sentiment. That was the alternative reality that was created. And second, suddenly, the military that is so loyal to Marcos, suddenly nag-bolt sila out of the blue. No? Now imagine me, a 23-year-old being there, iniisip ko, wow, butas to. That is a weakness. And for the first time in our lives, we saw Marcos weak. Politically, physically, psychologically. He wasn't in control. So yung tao, lumabas. Dati hindi mo magagawa yun. Yun nga lang mag-usap kayo about Marcos on the dinner table, it doesn't happen. You know why? Because there were rumors na pinakalat na maraming spiya si Marcos, even in your family. So imagine yung divide and conquer scenario at the time. Kaya fear was rampant kasi it comes from all sides. No, yung kwento, yung chismis, yung salitan, kasi nga walang media. Wala nothing to trust. No one to trust.
So lumakas yung loob ng mga tao kasi for the first time you said they saw Marcos weak.
Weak.
Ang
Yes.
ang gusto ko maintindihan naman sa panahon ng 2022, there's a recent commission survey by the ADR Institute. Ano yung qualities na gusto ng tao sa isang presidential candidate? And sinong presidential candidate ang merong ganong katangian? Parang lahat ng pintas mo actually kay Bongbong Marcos Ironically, the respondents said, nakikita nila kay Marcos yung strengths na yun, like yung qualified, yung malinis ang track record, yung mga parang Bongbong Marcos, yes. Bongbong Marcos, yes. Bakit may ganoong mismatch or disconnect? Parang why can't we see the weakness of the son now?
Sa tingin ko, baka si Rambo marami ring kwento dito kasi siya ang number one na mythbuster, no? Pero sa tingin ko lang, very quickly, I don't think people see Bongbong Marcos per se, Gigi. I think people see the father.
The father.
And there is I'm a sociologist of religion, gaya ng alam niyo. Sa tingin ko, ang nangyayari dito, this is really a very theological narrative, di ba, Sir Joel, na this is really the resurrection of the son. The resurrection of the father who died and now is about to reclaim the glory of the past. It's really...
Parang vessel lang si Bongbong.
Exactly. Alam naman natin wala siya napatunayan. Di ba pag tinanong natin anong napatunayan niya, meron, ayaw niya sabihin lang. Di ba? Ano yung kanyang record? Actually meron pero ayaw niya sabihin lang. Di ba? Parang gusto niya ng pagkakaisa lang. So really all banal, all mundane, all really meaningless. Pero ang napaka-effective na now people see into him really the glorious Austin. I think that's what I'm saying na nagpe-present sila ng isang vision of the future based on the past, and the only one who can deliver it is the son of the strong man.
Nakapangalan pa.
Exactly. Nakakalungkot man isipin, Ma'am Gigi, na at this point ang gusto nang sabihin naman na tao ay we tried the democracy from 1986. Pero it looks like it doesn't work. Let's go back to where we were. Is it still democratic? You bet it's still democratic. Pero it's a very different kind of democracy now.
Ito lang ba ang sige, John.
Yeah, I wrote about that just recently, about the resurrection of Ferdinand E. Marcos. And Marcos Jr. not being his own man. So, ano ko doon, kasi they are actually using the image of the father. No, and that's what they are selling through the son. Yun yung malupit na doon na that's why people are latching on to these lies kasi mas madali nang mas malakas si Marcos because that myth has always been around. No, if you see Marcos in his youth, in his glory days after assuming power in 1965, magugulat ka talaga sa kanya. No, he was intelligent. He was well dressed. All the trappings of power nasa kanya. Kung magsalita siya is like a Greek dramatist, no? Para siyang si Hitler na nagpa-practice ng mga speeches niya. Pero tingnan natin 'yon kasi this image has died with him. Yes. This image has died with him. And resurrecting that image in the son, bulag ka na talaga pag hindi mo nakita yung difference nila because I would hazard to say that there is a lot of difference between the son and the father. And the father actually in his diaries wrote a letter, di ba? Wrote something about the son, and even the historian Ambeth Ocampo confirmed it when I read his post. And sabi nga niya, I think this is authentic, no? Yung tinawag ni Marcos that his son was lazy.
Lazy and too carefree.
Yes, and Marcos wasn't anywhere near that. Marcos was a hard worker, dictator though he may have been.
Yeah. So that way, parang sinasabi mo, nag-effective yung messaging ng campaign ni Marcos. Ano ang meron ng messaging naman ng ibang presidential candidates? Bakit hindi nila yan mabutas? Hindi sila makasingit?
I can add, Ms. Gigi, a few points from our discussion so far. First thing about the failure of EDSA, I've been speaking with a lot of people on the ground, as in para sa EDSA commemoration, and yung mga tao na ang trabaho talaga nila tandaan ng EDSA. Hindi mahirap para sa maraming tao, sa mga Pilipino, para makitang talagang hindi gumana ang EDSA. Tanungin mo lang sila kung kamusta kayo ngayon, kamusta kayo dati. Marami sa kanila sasabihin na wala naman nagbago eh. Ano ba yung pangakong binabanggit nila? Hindi na kailangang isipin, maraming Pilipino na hindi na kailangan tawin sa statistics, sa mga facts. Ang sa kanila lang, titingnan lang nila yung surroundings nila. Sa same neighborhood pa rin sila nakatira, same social class pa rin sila nakatira, hindi sila masaya. At syempre, exacerbated by Duterte. The next thing is about the Marcos family. Marcos himself inheriting the image of his father. I think it is so local politics. Hindi siya isolated case. Napakaraming mga tatay-anak sa probinsya na minamana rin yung imahe ng ama sa anak. Kahit napatay yung ama, kahit na hindi sila pareho, objectively hindi sila pareho, just the fact na pareho sila ng pangalan, enough na yun para sa maraming tao na, oo, yung tatay ay yung anak. At yun yung nakikita ko ng sarili kong probinsya. Siyempre, ito namang sa mensahe ng Marcos sa Marcos campaign team, sobrang solid talaga eh. Unity, 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 unity. At itong sinasabi din ng kanilang mga supporters, unity, unity, unity. And kaakibat niyang naratibong unity na yan, ay sama-sama tayo, huwag tayo magsiraan. Siyempre yung mga kandidato naman na kalaban si Marcos, hindi rin makahirit ng kanila na ano ba yung unity na yan, peke yan. Siyempre, ang iisipin ng ibang mga voters ni Marcos, ang bad vibes naman ito, sinisiraan yung aking kandidato. Bakit hindi na lang nila pwedeng i-promote ang sarili nila? At palagi rin tong ina-amplify sa Marcos messages na habang wala si Marcos sa mga debates, ang laging sinasabi nila, maglaban-laban na lang kayo sa second place. Huwag kayong bad vibes sa amin. Ang lakas ng kapit nila sa supporters nila, at least online, at nakikita ko rin to offline, na ayaw nila nagsisiraan ng mga kandidato, nagbabangayan ng mga kandidato. At this works to the advantage of Marcos Jr. kasi siya yung nasa taas, paano makakaakyat ang ibang mga kandidato. May mga kandidatong pahapyaw na inaatake ang unity, na totoo ba tong unity? Pero it's just unity. Wala rin siyang talab sa mga supporters ni Marcos.
I like what Rambo said kasi 'di ba Jail, you're going to agree even from a sociological standpoint. Ginamit ng Marcos yung unity, wag tayo mag-away-away kasi Filipinos are generally non-confrontational. Hindi tayo bengadero I don't even know the word in Tagalog. Pero hindi tayo ganoon hindi tayo palaban, hindi tayo we'd rather not even historically. That's one point of one point that defines the Filipino kasi tayo were always hospitable, we're always welcoming, di ba? And even from a sociological standpoint, Jail, di ba, totoo yun, na hindi tayo pala-away kasi, and Marcos seems to have used that, very, very effectively, para hindi, kasi pag binanatan mo na siya dun sa sinabi niya, ikaw yung mali, hindi siya. Kahit ano pa yung ginawa niya.
Correct. Pwede mo nga sabihin, Sir Joel, na si Bongbong Marcos ay isang Miss Universe candidate. Diba? World peace. So, walang kalaman naman, pero mag-world peace ka lang, papalakpakan. Right? Napakababaw. Right? Pero sir, ano po?
Maraming Miss Universe na nadadapa sa stage.
Pero nananalo pa rin sila eh.
Sila nga yung nananalo.
Sila yung nadadapa.
Pero bigyan ko lang din siguro ng isa pang parang layer din, yung appeal, yung messaging nyo. Diba, it's one thing na yung messaging is unity eh. Parang, okay, I'm really a nice person, I'm a boy next door, I have Sandro Marcos who really has nothing to say, diba? But it's anyway appealing, it's anyway attractive to certain people. Diba? I mean, hindi mo kailangan naging matalino. Pero, according sa recent survey ng Pulse Asia, mga kapatid, dati, di ba, pag tinanong ng mga Pilipino, ano mga hinahanap ng mga katangian sa isang kandidato? Hindi nagsisinungaling, may integridad, may pagkalinga sa mahihirap. Ngayon, ladies and gentlemen, ang number one, nasa 60+% sa Pulse Asia survey, strong leadership. All of a sudden, pagdating ng 2022, ang hinahanap na ng mga Pilipino ngayon ay hindi lang yung mabait or hindi lang yung hindi nagsisinungaling, kundi strong leadership. Tapos pag tinignan natin yung mga specific characteristics na tingin ng mga tao about Bongbong Marcos, strong leader siya. Hindi siya unifying leader per se na nakikita natin sa social media at nakikita natin sa messaging niya. He's a strong leader. Obviously, this is really the legacy of the father. Exactly, that's what it is. Pag tinignan natin yung ibang mga kandidato, yung number 2, si Leni Robredo, in spite of her record, is not seen as a strong leader. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the challenge. I think a lot of Filipinos today are looking, and this is part and parcel of yung nabanggit ko kaninang authoritarian nostalgia, naghahanap tayo ng somebody who can make things happen, yung merong political will, whatever that means, somebody who really can use a bulldozer, really to flatten out the land, that kind of thing. So bagaman maganda ang record ni Leni Robredo, she's not necessarily seen as somebody who can make things happen. Ironically, si Bongbong Marcos, no record, readily seen as somebody who can make things happen. In this day and age, perceptions matter. And I think it's that perception that needs to be confronted. Kaya nga siguro ang challenge ko anybody who wants to challenge Bongbong Marcos needs to present himself or herself as a strong leader, ready on day one.
Pero may problema dyan. I like what yung sinabi ni Rambo kanina, na that most of these people, they define certain aspects of leadership only based on their own personal experience, no? Kung ano yung dinaanan ko. Kaya ang hirap basagin ng idea, no? Let's say, when you say strong leader, ano yung strong leader para sa akin? Kung gutom ako, ang strong leader para sa akin, may pagkain ako. 'Di ba? Kung wala akong pera pambili ng gamot, ang strong leader sa akin is yung tao na, yung leader na parang makakagawa ka ng an effective healthcare scheme. So, iba-iba yung definition. So, pag sinabi mong strong leader, ang hirap anuhin yan, ang hirap i-mold into one collective idea. Parang ganun. Kasi ang interpretation na ng tao dyan would be very different from the individual perspective and from a community perspective. Ang gulo niyan. Yung strong leader na yan. Kasi the last guy who did that, no, si Duterte, President Duterte, the last guy who did that failed on all counts, no?
Yeah.
I mean, sa kanya, ang strength, magmura ka, di ba? Maging misogynist ka, maging awayin mo lahat ng babaeng journalist. Yan yung niya yan yung idea niya ng maging bargas ka, maging siga ka ng kalye. Yan yung idea niya ng strong leader, which is, well, basically reinforced in some of our movies, no? Pero once na nakita na rin naman ng tao na, uy, grabe 30,000 na yung namamatay. Uy, grabe na. They begin to change kasi nag-iiba yung konsepto ng leader. And ito yung strong leader ngayon, knowing that we're under a pandemic, medyo problematic yung strength na pinapalabas ni Duterte, quote unquote.
At saka maraming Pilipino, milyunan ng mga Pilipino na hindi natugunan ng pandemic response ng government. Kaya
exactly.
Hindi na si Duterte or yung Duterte administration ang idea nila ng strong leadership.
Yes. Actually si Duterte, what happened was he proved himself to be the weak leader that he really is. No? The pandemic, in a way, helped in doing that.
Dito sa question niyo po, Ms. Gigi, about the strategy of the Marcoses, isang paulit-ulit na nakikinig natin sa campaign strategies. I'm covering Ping Lacson at saka team niya, but also I've been speaking with people on who are working with the memory of EDSA. Pareho ang kanilang pino-point out sa kagalingan ni Marcos sa perception. It's that he started early. As in, matagal na niya tinatrabaho tong perception. Them as a family, before pa lang ang election period, and 90 days na election period, pero si Marcos, natalo siya ni Lenny, nagtrabaho kaagad siya, meron kaagad siya vlog, marami kaagad na influencers, and this happened throughout years. This is not election campaigning, but it's already a part of the perception project that he has been going on. We're just witnessing the culmination. We're just witnessing this perception project accepting attacks from other candidates. Pero ilang taon na to and this is happening not just with his candidacy, but with also EDSA. Yes po, lahat talaga. It's something that they've been doing for the longest time. Kaya ang nangyayari ngayon, the campaign teams of other candidates and even people who want to remember EDSA, everybody's scrambling. How do you battle this? Ang tagal na kasi nagsimula nila, handa talaga sila karating din to. Kaya even I'm at loss for words for this.
In fact, even before the 2016 elections na tumakbo siyang vice president, di ba ni-report ng Rappler na the family apparently approached the Cambridge Analytica consultants, precisely to design a messaging strategy na magpapabago ng pagtingin ng mga tao, perception nila sa mga Marcos. So nakaseat siya before, 6 years ago.
Totoo yan. Totoo yan. At the same time, Ms. Gigi, kailangan rin natin um, bigyan ng pansin talaga yung content ng history lessons ng mga kabataan ngayon. I know that we should not blame young people today, pero I think we should also be responsible na tingnan din natin kung paano natuturuan ng mga bata ngayon. Sa research ng iba ko mga colleagues sa Mindanao, mga sociologists din, at in some parts of dito sa NCR, pinapakita nila na actually pag kinontent analysis mo yung mga DepEd approved na mga textbooks sa grade school at high school, especially grade school, no? Makikita mo na ang pagtingin lagi sa mga presidente ay always in terms of their accomplishments. May isang sentence about the martial law, about the dictatorship, and then that's it. That's a very sad way of looking at our history. Always celebrating only the good things, but not the bad things. So the ability to critique, the ability to question, hindi na i-exercise yun mula pagkabata. And I think that has to be encouraged, lalo na sa mga kabataan natin. Yung pagtatanong, it's a skill. It's not inherent to us. It's a skill that needs to be acquired by every young person.
At hindi nila ma-acquire yun when your textbook has parang devotes only 3 pages for the 20 years that Marcos was in power, di ba?
Exactly. Edifice complex lang. Pinagawa ito, pinagawa yun.
Every election, parang admittedly, we put parang undue hope in young people to vote correctly, to vote with their conscience. Pero sabi mo, Jael, sa isang column mo, this is undue pressure being put on the young people to, para mag-effect ng change through the ballot. Can you tell us more about this point of view?
No, thanks for bringing that up, Ms. Gigi. Narinig ko na kasi paulit-ulit din. I'm sure narinig mo yan, Ms. Gigi, ni Rambo, ni Sir Joel, lahat ng mga nanonood sa atin ngayon, na parang ang kabataan ng pag-asa ng bayan, ang kabataan will deliver the votes, will deliver the change that we need in our society, tapos magbibigay ng statistics. Tama ba lahat yun? Statistically speaking, tama. Kasi if you look at the youth vote, if the youth population, it can really sway, the results of the elections. Unfortunately para sa akin, I think it really misses the point of democratic participation ng GG. No? Para sa akin, wait a minute, ang nagkamali yung previous generation, ang magdadala ng kaayusan yung next generation, hindi ba dapat ang democratic at responsibility ng bawat mamamayan ay meron tayong accountability to one another, at ang tawag namin mga sociologists dyan ay intergenerational justice, no, na hindi pwedeng dalhin ng mga kabataan yung mga problema dinulot na kanilang mga nakatatanda sa kanila. So I feel na always asking the youth to really change our politics is irresponsible, especially because in light of our socio-economic condition, a lot of young people do not have access to education. A lot of young people do not have access to basic needs. A lot of people are out of school youth. No, and then yung may mga access naman to education, not many of them go to the best schools. So, diba, parang masyadong mabigat yung burden to really render the youth as our saviors.
And I always say, hindi naman black vote ang youth di ba? Yung youth, boboto sila according sa concerns and needs ng communities or ng sectors nila, di ba? Or ng province or region nila.
Correct,
so,
correct.
Hindi sila isang buo na pupunta lagi sa isang kandidato. Tapos, we also, parang pin our hopes on, the undecided. Parang, sa election na to, kung titignan mo yung surveys, kakaunti lang, maliit lang na portion ngayon yung undecided. And then, we transfer our hopes sa soft votes. Baka mag-change yung boto, yung preference ng mga soft lang yung support kay Marcos, lipat sa kandidato ko. Parang tama ba umbasa tayo sa ganun. And then also, nasusway din tayo ng we see images of volunteers giving their time, their money, attending rallies, putting up campaign materials, and you're thinking na baka may pag-asa hindi nakaka-capture sa survey. Anong tingin niyo sa ganito?
I can starting with the youth.
Sure.
The youth question kanina, Ms. Gigi. Tama yung we should not pin so much pressure on. And isa rin dyan is the heritage of memory. kung yung magulang nila, lola nila, pro-Marcos for years already, syempre yung kwentong na ipapasa sa kanila, ay syempre pro-Marcos din at mas susceptible sila na makakuha ng disinformation. And with that, yung may heritage sila of the memory of Marcos years from their family, kung pumunta silang social media, mas madaling ma-exploit yun, mas madaling mag-work yung algorithm and reinforcing you that again and again. Kaya mali rin yung expectation na dahil bata ka, dapat critical ka. Dagdag pa dyan, kahit na sobrang konti na nga ng laman ng EDSA history sa ating mga textbooks, ito mismong textbooks, ine-question ng mga influencers online. Halimbawa, sasabihin ng bata na natutunan sa libro niya na ito ang natutunan ko sa EDSA mula sa libro ko sa elementary sa high school. Online, ang naratibo ng mga influencers ay, saan mo natutunan yan? Sa textbooks na kontrolado ng mga Aquino? Huwag ka makinig sa textbooks na yan. Kahit konting-konti na nga lang yung laman ng textbooks, pinapasinungalingan pa ng mga influencers at ng mga tao online. So, marami pa rin talagang vulnerable sa youth. Alam natin na pwede maging critical ang youth, pero ayun, vulnerable pa rin sila. At itong mga youth na nagiging fanatic, nagiging influencers din sila. So, nag-roll over to again and again. Dito sa undecided voters naman, may nagano ako the other day, yesterday, umusap ako ng mga tao sa EDSA tungkol sa perception nila sa EDSA. I also talk to them about who they will vote for. Marami din sa kanila nagsasabi na kung saan na lang ako dalhin ng alon, kung saan na lang uso, wala naman akong problema. May ganun ako nakausap at hindi ko masasabing lahat ng Pilipino ganun, pero parang pagod na sila sa away at feeling ko dahil sa ganitong naratibo na ayaw nila sa away, baka mas dumikit sila dun sa kandidato nagsasabi. Unity na lang, mas simple. Ayun, yun yung nakikita ko sa aking reporting.
Pero sa tingin ko, sige, Sir Joel, please. Sorry.
Sige, Jay. Go ahead.
Oo, napapaisip din ako dito kasi 'di ba we're pinning our hopes on all. Tama naman 'yan. It's really about political strategy and so forth. The undecided and so forth. Pero alam niyo, Ms. Gigi, kasi iniisip ko rin kasi yung role ng mga institutions sa lipunan natin ang ganda ng point ni Rambo just now na 'di ba nabanggit niya kanina na parang bakit ko papaniwalaan yung textbook yung mga yan ay kontrolado naman ng mga Aquino. 'Di ba one sentence like that can dismantle all the work of every good historian in our society with one sentence like that. What does it really say about people's trust in institutions? Halimbawa, Rappler, alam natin, di ba, that we are one of the most heavily attacked media organization in the country, right? Tapos yung trust rating, I know every time that Rappler posts something, automatic merong mga 50% na comments doon na parang, Rappler biased yan. Diba? Some of them, of course, will come from trolls, no? Pero some
trigger words.
That's right? Or some of them would also come from real people with exactly those sentiments. Yung pagdismantle sa ABS-CBN, yung pagtitiwala sa mga historians, yung pagtitiwala sa official, sa credible storytellers, di ba? Lahat ng yun ay madaling i-dismiss na. At bakit mas madaling paniwalaan yung Tayano po? Mas madaling paniwalaan yung mga bagay na hindi talaga kapanipaniwala. Especially now that the Catholic Church is making its presence felt, at least different units of the Catholic Church. Again, sasabihin ng marami na parang ayaw na nila makinig sa simbahang Katoliko kasi pamumulitika lang yan. Pag samasamahin natin lahat yon, Ma'am Gigi, Joel, Rambo, what does it really say? It's really a massive distrust that many Filipinos have towards these traditional sources of knowledge. Media, church, history, the school, education, and so forth. That really poses a great challenge for all of us today.
Saka yung sinabi ni Rambo kanina na parang if you are a young person, anong laban mo kung ang impression mo about the Marcos years ay galing sa kwento ng lolo mo, ng parents mo, 'di ba? Kasi naisip ko lang, 'di ba, sa surveys when you ask voters, ano yung pinakamalakas na influence sa kanila sa pagdesisyon nila sino iboboto, it's still the people in your family, the leaders in the clan, in the community. Yeah, they get information from the media, but yung pagdidesisyon talaga, influence ng people that they personally know and trust. So nagtutugma yung ganoon, di ba?
Also, definitely.
Ang matindi pa dyan yung ano I just realized now, no? Isa pa matindi dyan, I think there's a difference, kunyari, between my generation and yung challenge that yung generation nila Rambo o ni Jail are facing. Kasi nung panahon namin, iisa lang ang source ng information.
Yes.
So, alam mo, malupit yan kasi parang you come to a point na sukan-suka ka na sa kakapuri ng dyaryo, ng radyo at ng kung ano pa man, ng sine kay Marcos, no? Although minsan may nakakalusot na we have the mosquito press, we have movies na medyo nagagamit siya for as a critique of the martial law years. Pero these are few and far between. Ang generation nila Rambo, ang information is coming from 1,000,001 sides. Talagang barrage of information. And minsan tinitingnan ko yung mga kabataan, iniisip ko, oh my God, how do you sift through that kind of information? This is democracy in steroids. Kumbaga, no? Talagang naka-barrage yung information, walang filter, wala lahat. And it's a scary thought if you really think about it. When you begin to take democracy and misuse it to such an extent na wala ng ability, na narab mo ng ability ang tao to actually think for themselves and make a decision towards what is right. Kasi andyan na lahat. And then, uuwi ka sa bahay, like you said, Jail, uuwi ka sa bahay and eto na, kausap mo na yung father mo, kausap mo yung mother mo na finally, ito yung magiging parang your final truth, no? Your final bedrock na pag-aanuhan ng decision mo. And makikinig ka na lang doon kesa pa dito. Sila nakikinig din dito sa marami. 'Di ba? So here's confusion, helping to make you take the wrong turn.
Yeah.
Nakakatakot yung generation nila Rambo talaga when I look at it. Kasi parang, wow, hindi ba kayo nahihilo dyan? Talagang mahihilo kayo. It's hard. It's more difficult than nung panahon namin. Kasi sa amin, like, there was a time, bibili ko ng dyaryo, I top 3, bibili ko Daily Express, which is a Marcos paper. I top 3, and then I get a rebel paper inside it na naka-fold. So, kukunin ko yan, lagay ko dito, pag uwi ko sa bahay, doon ko babasahin.
Wow.
So
Kasi
yung
sila,
tanong ko,
Yeah. Sige po.
So yung tanong ko, can we still turn the tide? Can we still reverse the numbers? A survey na today is showing that a majority of the voters will likely vote for Marcos if elections were held today. Given lahat ng diniscuss natin na parang nakagaling pa sa ama, legacy pa ng ama yung appeal niya, di ba? Paano na? Kaya pa ba? Given that we have more than 70 days elections. If you are somebody who doesn't want the Marcoses to return to Malacanang, who doesn't want a repeat of all the abuses and the corruption that the family represents, may chance ka ba to dislodge him from the front-runner spot?
I believe, sige, Jay.
Sige, sir.
Hindi sa akin kasi hindi simple as in easy, no? Kundi simple as in parang it's not complicated. Parang sa akin kasi parang no, we don't have time on our hands. No, if you're thinking of consciously turning the tide. Okay? I think what is important here is to continue campaigning not only on social media, but to give campaigning a personal touch. Because in my experience, in all the campaigns I've been with, covering campaigns and all, ang isang nakita ko talagang effective yung tao-tao. And they always, warm bodies, meeting warm bodies, and shaking hands, going there, and feeling your sincerity that you want to serve them. You can fake it all you want, di ba? But that is the most effective thing that can win you an elections. And also, there are many factors to an election. Minsan, you feel na ang election has a life of its own. It turns, di ba? It turns around. You biglang nagbabago yan given the many factors that control it. But sa akin, no, we don't have the time. No, we cannot just consciously turn the tide. There has to be, several factors will be in place. But one thing I can say, siguro one thing is certain in my head, although minsan I doubt it also. I think yung pagkakamay, warm bodies meeting warm bodies, I think is the most effective thing. Because Filipinos are very welcoming people. We are hospitable people. And hospitality itself is our gauge in many ways. No, if leadership is either strong or not.
Pero may limitasyon ang face-to-face campaigning ngayon.
Kasi nga, pandemic, yes. So this is going to be a really big challenge, a huge challenge.
So dapat ang may advantage sana is somebody who's really been around helping and serving, and somebody katulad naman ni Marcos na merong mahabang memory legacy yung tatay. Jail?
Ako, sa akin, siguro kami mga sociologists kasi parang, I'm sure, like, people who are seasoned journalists like you, Ma'am Gigi, Sir Joel, you have a view of history. Now, you have a long view of history. Ganun din ang mga historians at mga sociologists. Sa punto de vista ng mga sociologists, social movements no social movement or political change ever began from the majority.
I like that point.
Yes.
You've written about this. Pakikwento mo.
I did.
I agree.
It was a viral tweet. I didn't realize that it would resonate with a lot of people.
But that is true, what you said.
Sir Joel, and I'm sure you were the minority when you were young, when you were 23 or much younger, you were the minority because everybody believed ikadidisiplina ng bayan. Sa kauunlad ng bayan, disiplina ang kailangan. Everybody bought into it. Even the Catholic Church bought into it. So how many bishops were critical of the Marcoses from 1972? 7. Only 7 bishops. The others were in a critical collaboration. The others were in total collaboration. Ganun din sa mundo ng mga Protestants at evangelicals. What I'm saying, from the point of view of history, from the point of view of history, makikita natin that this is not just about the next 6 years, or this is not just about the next 72 days or so. I think this is really about cultivating really a democratic spirit, a democratic spirit that really fights for what is just, what is true, what is honest, and what is accountable. Kung umabot tayo sa punto na ganito na mukhang mananalo ulit yung isang anak ng diktador based on lies, hindi na nangangahulugan that the next 6 years, if he ever becomes president, ay tatahimik na tayo as Filipinos did back in the 1970s. Hindi na nangangahulugan na ganon. Social movements rest on the courage of the minority, and then everybody else will follow. I hope that's an encouragement to us all today. Social movements begin as a minority, and then the rest will follow.
I believe that.
Bagtag ko po siguro para sa mga galing sa campaign reporters talking about this. Tanong ni Ms. Gigi kung may pag-asa pa ba, paano ba ma-overturn yung tides. Ang sinasabi palagi ng mga campaign teams at strategists is anything can happen in the next 72 days. They said that 2 weeks ago din. Anything can happen 90 days. Pero hindi natin alam, parang hindi pa rin masyadong gumagalaw. But they still keep on saying that anything can happen. And it's true. Pwede may lumabas na scandal, pwedeng merong big gaffe, merong outstanding na ginawa ang isang tao, pwedeng may mamatay, hindi natin alam, anything can happen. Pwede yan, that's valid. But going to the point that was also started by Jail, it's that looking at the elections as something that would not be all and all project of this whole democratic exercise. Hindi ito ang katapusan. At siguro kung merong matututunan dito kay Marcos Jr., ito kahit na nung natalo siya noong 2016, nangangampanya pa rin siya Tinag-test niya ng election, nag-cultivate siya ng influencers, meron siyang mga questionable means sa disinformation. Ito yung dapat magiging constant sa laban. Kailangan pa ulit-ulit ng paglaban sa katotohanan kasi ito rin naman sinasabi ng mga lumalaban para sa alaala ng EDSA nasa panig natin ng katotohanan at yun yung hindi mawawala kahit anong mangyari, kahit gaano katagal man ang lumipas, kahit sino man na manalo sa eleksyon, sino pa man yan, ang katotohanan ay nandyan, ang mga dokumento ay nandyan, ang mga taong nagkwekwento tungkol sa martial law at sa karahasan ng ama ng anak na tumatakbo ngayon ay nandyan pa rin habang buhay pa sila at hindi dapat tumigil ang mga taong lumaban kung ano man ang mangyari sa eleksyon. Kahit manalo pa man hindi si Marcos, kailangan patuloy pa rin yung pag-alaala sa karahasan ng martial law, sa korupsyon na ngayong araw na hindi pwedeng paghiwalayin. Hindi pwedeng yung naalala. Yung dire-diretso lang. Yun.
So, if he wins, anong nakikita mong magiging lugar ng EDSA and its legacy sa ating consciousness as a people, as a society? Ang hashtag ni Joel is, hindi ito ang huling EDSA. Ganon kalaki yung kanyang pag-asa.
Yung Rappler pa daw. Kumusta na po kayong lahat?
Ano?
Ano ba?
Pag nanalo siya.
Pwede po ako magsimula ng siguro ako dito,
Yes.
natatakot ako sa imagination, sa imahe
Ayaw
ng
po, nakapag-order na kayo ng food.
may nakikinig ata tayong feedback. But natatakot ako sa pagpunta ko a few years ago. Pumunta ako Ilocos, nag-travel ako doon. Pumunta ako sa mga windmills, pumunta ako sa museum ni Marcos. At ibang-iba talaga ang alaala nila. At syempre, that's Marcos country, di ba? Yung tinatawag nating Marcos country, Ilocos, solid north. Paano kung naging Marcos country ang buong Pilipinas? Paano kaya ang alaala natin? Sa limited funding or limited resources nila sa Ilocos, meron silang museum doon for Marcos at marami silang alaala para kay Marcos Sr. Paano kung naging Pangulo si Junior? Paano kaya nila palalawakin pa yan mula Ilocos pababa, papuntang Mindanao? At parang ang pincer strategy rin to kasi yung vice president niya na nangunguna rin si Sara Duterte mula Mindanao, iba rin yung alaala nila tungkol sa martial law kasi meron din silang narratibong sinasabi na ang EDSA naman ay Metro Manila narrative lang yan. So yun ang aking kinatatakutan. Kung ano yung nakita ko sa Ilocos, baka mas lumawak pa siya na ito ang alaala nila kay Marcos Sr. na ang ganda-ganda. Kasinungalingan lahat na naririnig nyo sa ibang bahagi ng Pilipinas. Pero inaasahan ko rin na, syempre, ulitin ko, ang katotohanan na hindi mababago, nandiyan pa rin mga dokumento, nasa tama pa rin lagi ang katotohanan. At sana ang mga taong nandito sa panig ng katotohanan ay hindi tumigil para ipaglaban ito.
The elders?
Elders, si Sir Joel muna. Elders.
Age before beauty. De ganito, ano magiging
Lugar ng
contribution
EDSA.
no? Ewan ko kung EDSA yung magiging centerpiece of whatever it is we would be facing in the future. I'm not so sure. Ang medyo napapag-isipan ko minsan, napapagnilay-nilayan ko, is that, ang dami kong, I'd like to look at history. No? I want to put my hope in history. No? Andyan si Hitler, who was very popular, and still he went down. No? Ano yung kanya? Crash and burn talaga. No? And then yung si Mussolini was there, crash and burn yan. Si Ceausescu was there, crash and burn din yung pinagdaanan ng mga tyrants na yan. Now, there were tyrants who ruled longer than they did, no? And still enjoy substantial amount of popularity with the people. And ang sa akin, sa Philippines, medyo ang nakikita ko kasi, parang medyo like for example, Putin of Russia and Xi Jinping of China, lahat sila landmass. One big landmass. What I am banking on sa Philippines is that we're an archipelago. And ang dami pa ring iba. Ang hirap pagbuklurin na nga natin by regions eh. Hindi na nga tayo in a way ma-unite because just of our regionalism. Sa tingin mo, ma-unite pa tayo politically, it's going to be difficult. So I would always bank on this as something that might contribute to a future where dissent will still be around, no? Where critical thinking will still be exercised just because we are people who are different. And we will, I think, recognize that for a long time. Yung sinasabi nating we are a divided people might just work to our advantage at this point, rather than have one big landmass that you can fool and you can lie to, and everyone will just follow everyone's direction. Parang ganun. Sa akin nakikita ko parang blessing yata sa atin yung may dagat tayo sa gitna ng ating mga isla.
Kaya nga sabi ni Bongbong daw, unity na lang, diba?
Yeah, mahirapan siya doon. Mahirapan siya doon.
Jail?
Sa akin, siguro nalulungkot lang ako, the way we commemorate EDSA kasi is always about the big figures, di ba? And not about people. Not about people. Sa akin kasi yung spirit of EDSA, pag tinanong ako, hindi siya about Fidel Ramos, Ferdinand. Napakahalaga nun, di ba? Mga pivotal figures sila. Pero kung kwento siya ng madre na itinaya yung buhay ng mga Pilipinong napagod na, ng mga Pilipinong sa sobrang galit, pumasok sa Malacanang para sirain yung mga gamit. These emotions are so powerful kasi marami sa mga emotions na yan, makaka-relate ang maraming mga Pilipino. Sama ng loob sa nangyayari, sama ng loob sa pare-parehong mga taong namumuno, political dynasties and so forth. I feel that that's how we should talk about, I think that's how we should talk about EDSA. It's the story of the people, not the story of only some people. And the moment we get to reclaim it as the story of ordinary Filipinos who brave the forces of evil, if I could put it that way, I think a lot more will be inspired today. Na maaalala ng mga kabataan in particular na, wait a minute, these people made a huge sacrifice so that I can speak freely today.
Thank you, Jail, Joel, and Rambo. We set out to answer the questions, is it still possible to turn the tide? Can poll numbers still be reversed if we don't want a Marcos return to Malacanang? And the answer from this group is no, if we will just look at it as a time frame, 70 days to go. But it's possible if we look at it as an exercise in cultivating a democratic spirit. Katulad ng sinabi ni Jail, it doesn't stop on election day. And at direct quote ko, I really like these words from Jail, social movements rest on the courage of the minority and the rest will follow. To those who are watching us, for our explainers, in-depth reports, investigation podcasts, and videos about the Marcoses, about the campaigns and elections and other issues, please visit and bookmark our Newsbreak section at rappler.com/section/newsbreak. And if you want to be part of a group that has access to exclusive content and events and briefings, you can join Rappler Plus. It's a community of Rappler supporters who engage in smart and constructive conversation with our journalists and analysts. If you have leads for investigative stories, you can email us via feedback@rappler.com or you can send us messages sa messenger ng aming Facebook account na Newsbreak. Thank you, Jail, again, and Joel and Rambo. I'm Miriam Grace Go. Tumuto kayo sa Newsbreak Chats. See you again in March.